Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessa. Welcome to Not Alone. Today we have Andrea here with us today as our guest. So thank you so much, Andrea, for saying yes and coming to be with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about myself. Well, I'm really short, so I'm going to sit like this because my legs never touch the ground when I sit down. There are no chairs made for short-legged people.
Maybe that will become, a thing that we can buy one day.
Yeah. Like those ADHD chairs where you can
Yes.
kneel on them. And sit.
Yes.
I need one of those, but they're
And
very
do you do
expensive.
other things with those?
Yeah, like
other ways to keep your hands busy and like pedals and stuff.
Yeah, and you just move around a lot. And yeah, I need one of those.
Yep. Those would be perfect. Okay, how did you get to Alberta?
How did I get to Alberta? My husband came out here to work, and uh, my children and I, did not want to move to Alberta.
Sorry.
We'd never been here, so we had no idea what Alberta was like. But my family, not Vernon's family, always called Alberta Hotel California.
Oh.
That you could never leave.
Okay.
You got used to making money and you were stuck here forever. It doesn't sound very nice, but that's what they called it. And so that's what I had in my mind. And I was like, I do not want to go to Alberta. And my husband came home after being away for 3 months. Yeah, and that was regular. He'd be here for 3 months and then he'd come home for a week or two. He'd save up all his time and be with us. And so he came home and he said, please, just move. And I said, okay, I'll put the house up for 3 weeks for sale. And we had just finished our beautiful house. We had it renovated exactly. It was like my dream house. It was exactly the way I wanted it. It was beautiful. And I said, well, I'll put it up for 3 weeks. And I called the real estate agent and he said, nobody puts a house up for 3 weeks. I said, that's how long I'm going to put it up for, is 3 weeks. He said, okay. And so I put the house up for 3 weeks. In 3 days it had sold.
Wow. In 3 days.
Yes. 3 days. The very first people.
Fire?
Yeah. Yeah. 3 days after it went on the market, it was gone.
Interesting. There's 3 days.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks. You said 3 weeks. Number 3.
And there were 3 houses on our street that had been for sale for years.
Wow.
But ours sold. And we got exactly what we wanted for it. They just paid the price. They didn't even try to get us to come down.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we moved out here and I said, well, I will move to as close to the East Coast as I possibly can in Alberta. And then I got there and I was like, yeah, the Lord does not want me here. So we kept driving until we got to Spruce Grove and we loved, all 3 of us. Because my boys were still with me and my husband was working. We all loved how Spruce Grove felt in the spirit realm. And so we decided to stay here.
Well, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful you guys are here.
I've met so many wonderful people.
So you have a ministry. How would you describe your ministry?
So we do a lot of work with different organizations. We work with Patrick's organization called Giving Refugees Hope in Uganda.
Yes. We're just here.
Yeah. He's lovely. We have children, like I'm the director of the children's home for his organization. So we work with him, and I also work with a few other organizations. I'm not strictly affiliated with any organization in particular. It's more of I do what I do, and then I come alongside them
supporting to do in all the areas.
Yeah, to do certain things. Yeah. And so I've been invited into quite a few things lately.
Wow.
Like mentoring and doing discipleship with new Christians in the tech industry. And
wow.
Yeah, so we're just kind of trying to figure out exactly what we do. I also do a lot of, I give prophetic words to nations and people groups.
Yeah.
They invite me in, and usually it's online. But we'll be traveling to different countries off and on and giving prophetic words. So, yeah.
You recently were in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
You were at, am I saying this correctly, Herrnut?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so for those listening who've never even heard of Herrnut, can you tell us the background of this? This is awesome timing because Kayla and I, we just actually recorded an episode on revival, and we just simply said like one sentence about Herrnut. So I'm so excited that you're going to share about this.
Yeah, so Hernut is the home of, I think it's called the Moravian Revival, but it's the Moravian Church. And so what happened was the Moravians were in this area, which is now the Czech Republic, and I think a little bit of northeast Germany. And so they had been persecuted because of their beliefs. They were Protestant, and the area was widely Catholic at the time. And so Hernut came to be because the Duke in that area, he owned all this land, and he said, well, you can come here, and this will be a safe place for you. And so that's how Hernut came to be.
Okay. Duke would be the equivalent today of what sort of a leader?
It would be probably like a prime minister, because it was over an entire section of the country of Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Moravia, I think it was called at the time.
Okay. So the land is given to them.
Mm-hmm.
They start praying.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens?
So the Moravians came, and they kind of were organized by the Duke. They came there, and all of the issues that you have.
Like what would be one, for example?
So
like not getting along.
Yeah. They had different ideas. So even though they were Protestant, everybody had their own ideas. It's like a church. You go to a church, and just because you're all going to the same denomination doesn't necessarily mean that you all believe exactly the same thing. Right. Or in a family, like everyone has their own opinions and ideas about how things should be done.
Yes.
And so you had this mix of people who had different ideas and desires and how things should be done. And so they didn't always get along. And so the Duke there realized he needed to put some protocol in place in order to keep the peace. And so he established a church for them to, well, it wouldn't even really be called a church. It was a gathering. And so they would gather every day and pray together. And then they would have what we would probably call small groups. And they would gather in homes, and it was different people from different families would gather, and they would have to spend time together. And so yeah, you couldn't just like invite your person that you got along with the best, your best friend from where you had been before, to come and be in your small group. He put them together purposely, so that people would have to talk about their differences and come to an agreement and get along, learn how to get along. And so, so this happened, and then they would travel to the nearby town where the Duke had his home, and they would have church on Sundays.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was in addition to having
Wednesday every
church.
day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so then this town came into being of Herrnut, with all these people who had diverse ideas and sometimes diverse backgrounds. Like they weren't all from the same area. So if you go to that area today, the people in the Czech Republic are very different from the people in East Germany or the people in Poland, because Poland is in there, in sandwiched in there too.
Great.
Yeah, and so so you got this town called Herrnhut. What happened eventually is that there were two. No, I'm going to say it wrong. There were some young girls, and they felt the weight of the presence of God in their lives, and they felt the conviction of their sins. And so it wasn't that someone came in and said, like, you're so awful compared to the rest of the people in the town. It was these girls really believed that they had committed sin and that their inherent nature was sinful and they needed the forgiveness of God. And so they were seeking this and they were weeping, and the whole town saw it.
Wow.
And was impacted by it. And so when the Duke found this out, and the leader of the church there, who happened to be the Duke's best friend, they called the girls to come to the church. And so the Duke prayed with them and he blessed them. And what happened was they kept praying, these young girls. And then the adults started to join them because the presence was on them. And so the adults started to join them. And as they joined them, this revival came about. So even though they were already Christian believers, they needed a revival. And so when we talk about revival, often we talk about it as being people coming who don't know the Lord. But really, revival starts with people who know the Lord being refreshed and having that breath of life come and the fire come into them again, right?
Yes.
And so, so that's what happened in Herrnhut. And then people heard about it, and they heard about the safe place, and they came, and yeah, and so this continued on. There was a daily watchword, and it still continues on with the Moravian Church. You can go online and get the watchwords.
So what is that, the watchword?
It's like a scripture, and it's what they're praying. And so, like, what's interesting is that the words line up with things that are happening
globally.
Yeah, happening globally or happening in Germany or wherever, right? Wherever God is moving, or where significant things are happening, they line up quite often. But these words are chosen years in advance. So the scriptures are not like chosen 2 weeks ahead. They're years in advance. And so it's very interesting to see how these line up with what's happening and what God has established. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So basically, since that revival started, it really hasn't ended.
No. So, like, when you go there, you walk into that church, and it is amazing. We were there. I don't know how to explain walking into that church other than that the presence of God hits you in the face. It's like a wall of his presence, and it envelops you and wraps around you. It's really amazing. And so you can still go and visit that church. This prayer meeting that stemmed out of the revival has gone on. And there was this time during the war and during the occupation of East Germany. And there were families that continued the prayer meeting on, so it never stopped, even though it wasn't okay to be a Christian at that time.
Yeah.
And a lot of things had been shut down. It continued on, and I got to meet some of the people from the families.
You did?
That continued it. Yes. Well, East Germany and West Germany were divided.
That's like heroes in the faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what was that like?
One of the ladies I met, I had no idea who she was. She does not speak English at all. She came running up to me and she just wrapped her arms around me the very first time I saw her.
Wow.
And we were in a big crowd. So she kind of picked me out and came running towards me and wrapped her arms around me. And all she could say was Canadian, because a friend of mine had told her I was a Canadian, a German friend of mine. And and she's just so happy to see me and to have someone from Canada there. And I'm not quite sure why that impacted her so much, but it was important to her. You could see. But when she wrapped her arms around me, I could feel the weight. It was like you take one of those weighted blankets and you put it on your shoulders, and that's what it felt like. But it didn't feel bad in any way. It felt like there was just this weight to this tiny little woman. She's probably about 4'5", 4'6", maybe.
Okay.
She was tiny.
Yes.
And so the weight of the feeling of having her arms wrapped around me did not make sense for her stature.
Wow.
So you knew it had to be something more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you have prayer time there? Did you worship there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to join the prayer meeting a few times, which was beautiful. We spent some time walking through the town and praying, and we went to different places. They have springs in the woods that we went and walked to, and they have like archways, stone archways built for why they're significant. We walked the trail that they would have walked to go to the meetings each day. And then where they would have walked to go to this church that they would have went to once a week.
While you were there, did you have any encounters with the Lord that you would be? A lot of times they're really personal, but if you have any that you can share, would you feel comfortable?
So the whole town of Herrnut comes together on Shabbat, and
hang on a second. What is Shabbat?
It is the Sabbath, the Lord's Sabbath, and so they celebrate the Sabbath together. And so lots of these people are not Christian, they're not Jewish, they're just German, and they live in that town. And so, but the church there, Jesus House, they invite them in to the garden there, and they have a Shabbat feast together. And so everybody brings food and they celebrate communion. So part of that celebration is that the fathers bless the children. And so they called up all the fathers and all the men who are fathers naturally. And they said, would you bless the people? And so different ones were going around and blessing. But there's this one man, his name is Michael, and he came, and he's a very, very large man. And he put his hands on my head, but they like covered my face and everything. He's such a big man. And he put his hands on my head and he blessed me. And I found out that from talking to him later, that he was from Czech Republic, and he grew up in this house in the Czech Republic that was a storehouse for Bibles. And Brother Andrew, you can read about him. There's books and biographies about Brother Andrew. He smuggled Bibles into Russia and East Germany and the Czech Republic and Poland and different places. And so he used this house as a store place for Bibles. And so everyone in the area knew they could go there and get a Bible, but they never, ever got reported. And so he grew up with Brother Andrew being in their house.
Wow.
This hero of the faith.
Yes.
And he's telling me about this. And this is the man that blessed me.
Wow. Put his hands on you.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Which was, it felt like, sorry, I'm covering my mic. It felt like an otherworldly experience. It felt unreal. And now when I talk about it, it feels kind of like, did that really happen?
Right. Yes.
Just because it was so surreal and otherworldly for me at the time. Yeah.
Right. Can you talk about Brother Andrew quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Not that we want to rush this, but just how would you sum up his life? And how do others find more about Brother Andrew if they've never heard of him?
Yeah, if you search Brother Andrew online and smuggled Bibles, you'll find it. Or Russia and Brother Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah, basically he smuggled Bibles during the Cold War, so during the occupation of East Germany, and when Russia, it was illegal to have Bibles in Russia, and I think possibly China, but I know it was Russia and Poland and the Czech Republic and East Germany that he did it.
After your experience at Herrnut, so you've been there for a few days, you've done prayer meetings, church services. You had language for what you walked away with.
I walked away with so many rich connections, of course. You can't go to a place like that and not make connections. The people there, just from being in that atmosphere, they want to give away what they have. Wow. Yeah, they want to. We talk about relationships a lot in North America. Coming from a Christian background, we talk about relationship and how important it is. They don't talk about it. They display it.
Action.
Yeah. I never heard anybody really talk about relationships all that much, but it was what they did. Wow. The other thing, and I did talk to you before about Korea, but between Korea and Herrnut, I came to this revelation and understanding of what a true culture of honor is. There's the honor, of course, that we give our parents and that we give leaders. But a culture of honor is different. It's kingdom focused. And so what happens when you have a culture of honor is you have what Jonathen did for David. And he took his armor and his sword and he gave it to David. And he said, I'm going to give you this and honor you to pull you up into this place, this station that is mine, because Jonathan was the king's son, Saul's son. And so it was his place. But he said, I'm going to honor you in this and support you in it, in this place that you do not deserve and that you did not ask for. And I'm going to support you here. And that's what the Lord does for us. He calls us to be co-heirs with him, and we absolutely do not deserve to be co-heirs. But he says, I want you to come up and be a co-heir and rule and reign with me. And we don't deserve that. And so that's a culture of honor. And I watched that time after time in Korea and in Hernut. The children, you kind of have to be there to understand, but the children come up and they participate in worship in a way I've never seen before. It's not, okay, now it's time for the children to do their thing, or now we're going to sing a children's song. It's the children come up and they lead and they move in worship, and it's as well as the adults. It's not, now is the time for something less than. And I watched them all line up. And when we were in Korea, of course, as well, I watched a 14-year-old give a message that was better than most evangelists that have worldwide ministries. And so I came away with that understanding, and I realized that's actually what we're all called to do. We're called to lead in a way that we pull people up into a place they do not deserve. We don't wait like our North American ideals tell us that we wait until they're able to do it.
Right.
But kingdom ideology says you pull them up into a place they don't deserve, and then you give them a tool or two, and they'll get it.
Right.
And you support them until they do. Now, I mean, that's not to say we should, be giving swords to little children.
Yes.
Yes. I'm not saying that. David wasn't a little child when Jonathan gave him a sword.
He had a lot of experience.
Yes.
With each other.
Yes. So yeah.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
How has that visit that you had affected the posture of your heart today?
I'm just going to be a little bit vulnerable.
You be completely vulnerable. This is safe.
So my husband and I have done leadership since shortly after we were married. We've been leaders in churches, and we've pastored. I always waited for someone to honor me, to feel like I could fulfill my calling and be in the office that I was called to. And now I've realized that that's not how I step into an office. I step into an office because I've honored the ones that will come after me. I've honored the ones that are not there yet. And that's how you truly be a leader. And so it's changed the way that I posture myself in leadership, and postured myself in the way that I want to run our ministry, or the way that I mentor people. It's not me waiting for them to honor me, or for anyone even above me to honor me. It's me honoring other people. That's the way that you enter into leadership, that you enter into an office, that you enter into your true identity of who you are in Christ.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being vulnerable. And I'm glad you feel safe to be vulnerable. The last guest we had, which was Patrick, left advice, because we've been doing this thing where the last guest leaves advice for the next guest, not knowing who the next guest is. So you're the next guest after Patrick. And so I'm going to read to you his advice, and then I'm going to ask if you can leave the next guest advice.
Okay.
So his advice to you is this: continue to do the calling of God. It is an opportunity God has given you to serve. We are here for a short time. People will not remember you for what you own. They will remember what you did for others. What is your advice to the next guest?
Oh, I like that.
I have to let that sink in, right? It actually is quite in line with what you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I asked the Lord what I should say before I came, and He said not to take note of my words before time. My advice is that there's nothing more important than the presence of the Lord. There's nothing more worthy of chasing after, of investing in, of uh, of desiring than the presence of the Lord. And I heard this a little, I don't know, it's called a meme or a video. Oh, a reel. That's what it's called on Instagram. I watched this little reel that someone had sent to me on Instagram, and it talked about being hungry and how there's a very big difference between you and I being hungry because we had lunch and now it's supper time, than someone who's been in the desert for weeks and had nothing to eat and nothing to drink. So I want to go after the presence of the Lord with the hunger and the thirst of someone who's been in the desert, even though I haven't, even though I felt the presence 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago. I want to go after with that hunger. And so that would be part of my advice. Go after the Lord with everything that you have. Keep nothing back. There's nothing more worthy.
Only people that have been in the desert actually know it. Nobody wants to go to the desert. But it's life-changing in the desert.
Oh, it is.
It's you don't want to say it, but like that's unfortunately where you learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trained for that hunger and the thirst.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing. And I hope that you'll come back and share the next little treasures that you have for us from the other places you end up.
That would be my pleasure.
Okay. Well, bless you and bless everybody that you minister to.
And thank you so much for having me.
So meaningful. All right. And bless all of you for watching too. We will see you next time.